Welcome to The People I Know, a philosophical podcast with and about the diverse people I've met over the years as a philosopher, dancer, dog lover, and off grid enthusiast. Today's special guest is a longtime friend. She is an organization and community leadership coach, Nicky Avant-Brown. Enjoy.
My name is Nicky Avant-Brown. I am a life and leadership coach. I focus on coaching individuals within the community. So, in that way, I'm just really working hard to empower leaders of all forms, shapes, sizes, ages, um, all backgrounds, cultural histories, and really just helping people embody their best selves inside of organizations and out.
Awesome. And we met through an organization that was, how many years ago was that now?
Started in 2010.
Okay, you started
I
then. Yeah.
think, yeah.
Because I think I started there in 2009 and maybe it was the next year, something like that.
Oh man, like 10, 11 years.
I
That's
know.
crazy.
It is.
We still look the same.
We do.
So,
So that organization is working with adults with Asperger's syndrome and adults on the autism spectrum. Was that how you got started with doing this kind of leadership work, or were you already doing it? Is this something that you knew you wanted to be doing?
yeah. So I think so I started when I was a lot younger, and I started doing peer work. I was actually 5 years old in school and in kindergarten doing peer work. I found awards from the past, and I was like, "Whoa!" So, so it's something that must have always been embedded in me.
Yeah.
As like one of those really core foundations. One of those core principles of just like help how you can when you're able, and just I didn't realize that it was something I was so passionate about until we were at that organization. What is because right after that organization, after leaving, um, is when I went and got my coaching certification. And the reason I did was because while I was at that organization, we were, I found myself being helpful, being useful in some way, right? Helping
Mm-hmm.
the younger people to really see themselves more clearly. But I noticed that they didn't have a lot of autonomy in their own lives, right? In the decisions that they wanted to make. Those decisions were being made in important decisions like
Mm-hmm.
career, girlfriend, boyfriend, identity, were being made by the people around them, the people who had their best interests at heart, but couldn't quite, but they were encroaching
Yeah.
on kind of like their ability to achieve what they wanted in their own lives. And so, so I was just like, I want more people to have voice and choice, and I wanted to figure out how to better empower people to do that.
Mm.
Yeah.
More people to have voice and choice.
Simple. Right?
Yeah.
Seems simple. Yeah.
Seems simple.
Yeah. So before that, I worked with foster homeless, runaway foster youth. I worked with different populations, youth in the juvenile justice system. Um, just youth. I did a lot of youth development, I think, to that up until then. And so then after that, just taking on the strategy of like, okay, well, how do we continue to be our best selves and have voice and choice when it matters as adults, and where people were really getting beat down were in organizations. Like people were suffering, right? Always getting suffering and being kind of broken to an extent by the hierarchy that I was, that we all feel. But it was just so evident. It was so clear that in organizations, especially people who are non-traditional leaders, which are really the ones in the community that I hope to, that I work with and hope to really do best by, they just weren't really um, receiving the validation that they needed in order to get to the next level, whatever
What
that
do
would look
you,
like for them.
how do you mean by non-traditional leaders?
Yeah. So essentially, well, I would say like once I got my coaching certification, I started to notice certain things. Right. Most coaches, well, the first of all, the coaching profession is dominated by white folks, white folks, but a lot like nonprofits, a lot of white women.
Mm.
Um, well, it started out white men, and then white women kind of came in and they were really providing executive coaching. Coaching was offered at the executive level. It really wasn't a trickle down type of approach or something that was accessible to people who weren't, directors at the director's level,
Mm.
and it really stayed in the realm of corporations, right? It was like corporate coaching, and it was really costly, really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't affordable. People weren't accessing it, and most people didn't know about it. People of color. So when we talk about non-traditional leaders, the intention there is to reach and serve people who are budding leaders, right? So maybe like somebody who are considered to be paraprofessionals, right? Or even entry level folks who are just trying to figure out their way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to figure out how to be their most authentic selves in these spaces. So non-traditional leaders really encompass, it spans a wide range of folks, right? Because you can look at people in the community and you can see, a woman, a mother, or just somebody who started a farming or urban farming program and is feeding her community. Well, she's obviously a leader, but she doesn't have the title or what do you call it?
Like the credentials.
Maybe even the credentials or the notoriety, so to speak, or she doesn't get recognized as such by, in an official way. But people experience her as a leader, right? They experience her leadership. They're inspired by her leadership. And maybe she might not feel like, a leader. She might not call herself that because of
Right.
the connotations associated with being a leader. And sometimes when we associate when we think of leaders and leadership, we think of hierarchy, or we think of like the stuffy box that we have to try to fit into. We think of, white supremacy. Maybe we think of systems I was gonna say systems hierarchy, but we think of oppressive systems.
Yeah.
and maybe even competitiveness and everything that people associate with striving for something. So non-traditional leaders, like let's say in youth development, were at times, for instance, young people who were part of the foster system, and as they aged out, started to speak out about their experiences. It started to really bring to light some of the things that were broken in the system, right? And starting to include things that can be done, right? Offer new ideas and who are changing things. I mean, so in this way, like when we engage with these non-traditional leaders, where we usually find them are in places where there's some social justice, a social justice focus, some social change happening, some change agents who are from the community, right? So non-traditional leaders could be anyone who may not believe that they're leading. Those people who lead from behind, or or who manage up. Those are the ones that we're like, okay, I'm like,
Yeah.
pause, let's recognize you. And, let's call you whatever you want to be called, but,
Yeah.
we want to support you.
Yeah. While I was teaching community college down in South Florida, of course, we had a lot of trainings that we had to do. And I remember being in one in particular, I only got like this little portion of it. And then I got this, like, I don't know, 4 CD set that I keep in my car. I remember sitting in the training thinking, well, damn, like, this is a secret. Like, I need to hear these things. This is really helpful for me as a professional. This is really helpful for me as an instructor. This is really helpful for me, like, just to motivate me every day to focus and stay on my path, or to figure out my path. And so kind of since then, I mean, I see where there's some problematic stuff in it. But I've held on to, or as a professional since then, I always reflected on, like, damn, why is this such a guarded thing? Why isn't this made available to other people, to the non-executives, to, why did I
Mhm.
have to have a boss, a leader of this school, who did advocate for this being available for all of the instructors, not just for the head honchos at the school? Why did it take that long? um, Kind of thing. So that's cool what you do.
I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, you got a point, right? So a lot of the time, it's like why are we giving away so much to people who have already gotten to a place where they, where it's starting to come a little easier to them. They have access
Hmm.
to it already. Why
Hmm.
are we giving it to people who just, aren't yet there, right? So,
Hmm.
and what ends up happening is that the people at the top, so to speak, are offered so many different resources, right? And
Hmm.
oftentimes they get overwhelmed by them. They're like, okay, I don't even know what to do. And they may
Mm.
or may not take advantage of it. So a lot of them aren't going, to the people
Yeah.
who really want to have this information. And it's crazy. Like when you're younger, it's like, I have no idea what I don't know. So I don't, it's like, I didn't even know coaching was a thing.
Right.
And then it's like I'm experiencing the magic of it. When I was in the program, I was getting coached, and it literally was changing my whole way of thinking, and setting the whole foundation for what I could actually do in this world.
Yeah.
So it's nuts. It's like, so that's why that's what I'm like, just want to continue to bring coaching down, right? So it has,
Hmm.
deeper roots. So, and a wider reach.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. So moving forward into, official questions, because I only have 4 official questions. So the next one is
okay.
about being Black.
Yay. Okay. I'm ready for it.
Yeah. Why and or when does being Black matter for you? And that's personally or professionally.
That is quite the loaded question. Uh, Oh, all the time. I cannot get around being Black. Nor do I want to. It's like one of the best things that I get to be. It is one of the best things. um, Being Black, it's like it affords me a certain privilege, right? I say it's a privilege. I say it all the time. And I say it all the time to white people, especially because they sometimes, especially people who are like, who are holding a lot of white guilt,
Mm.
they are of this belief that they have the privilege because it's like, oh, I just learned about this thing called privilege and I got it all and you don't got none, and I got to learn how to share with you, and so I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you are that I value you or care about you or something to that extent. And I'm like, I don't
Mm.
need any of that, right? Because my privileges are in being able to feel comfortable enough to say, I don't need that stuff, white people. Like,
Mm.
look, white lady, I don't
Hmm.
need it. My privilege is in being able to express myself as widely or as loudly as I want, and not having grown up in a culture where that was shamed, or it's like we're not supposed to show emotion. I show emotion. And so I get to release. I have a privilege of being in my body. As a Black person, I have a privilege of being part of a culture. Right? We always talk about Black people as a whole. And then we have a lot of people who are like, well, I'm not all Black people. I don't represent Black people. And it's true. However, I also have the privilege of jumping into Black people cultures around the world, right? Because I'm a Black person, because we share an experience of being oppressed. I'm like, I'm privileged in so many ways. I'm privileged because I get to speak multiple linguistic styles, right? I get to blend. I get to, I get to blend and not. I have, a double consciousness, which is good. I mean, it has its pros and its cons, but it is an elevated level of thinking. It is a higher consciousness. It is a totally juicy way of being. And I'm like, I revel in that. I get to claim people who, as us, like, I get to claim Coleman and Young. I get to claim Dinkins. I get to claim Maya. I get to claim Bell Hooks. I get to claim Royster. I get to claim Nicki Minaj if I wanted to. I wanted to. And I get to do that. I get to be like, I claim her today and not tomorrow. I get to claim some Megan Thee Stallion songs, but not WAP. I get to be ratchet. I get to be all of myself, and all of that. Like, ratchetness is fun. I get to, I get to kiki. I get to be part of a lot. And so of course, like, I'm also a gay lady, and I get to be a lot of other stuff there, right? And I just feel like the more identities I have, the more life I get to live, and the more culture I get to experience. But at the same time, being Blackness is at the foundation of my understanding of the world and of life. I just remember when being young, like super young, I don't know, 4. And I think my earliest memories of like this concept that I was part of this community that was receiving a disproportionate resources or opportunities was when I'm sitting with my family in the front room, and we're watching the local news, and they were talking. It's like my grandmother, my mother, father, aunts, cousins, and we had a tiny little house, but people were just like packed in together, and they were just yelling, talking about how, basically like, and the white people, in the suburbs get this, but the Black people, we get this, and nobody is doing this, and we have to do something, and it was like, what, we not getting something, and it's like, because we're Black, this is crazy. And then it was like, okay, so that opened it up to me exploring what Black is. And I love it because those types of experiences allow me to share. I love to share those experiences, especially with people who have not had them, nor can they fathom those types of conversations. They may have been complacent in their learning about what that could be like for Black people. Or people from low income communities, because not all, the other thing is not all Black people share that experience.
Right.
I met a woman, a mentor of mine who, grew up totally privileged, and she grew up in a predominantly white world. I can't even say neighborhood, like world. And so, I remember talking to her about, but, and this was when I was younger, and I had made some assumptions. And one of my assumptions that I think a lot of young Black people make is that, especially, is that the oppression felt is experienced by everybody. Like we experience oppression the same way. And so I was like, yeah, and blah, blah, blah. And she was just like, yeah, no, I don't get
feel
that. And I was like, what you mean you don't feel it? You should be angry. She's like, I'm not angry about that. She's like, it is what it is. And I just was, at first, I was like, oh no, like you gotta be angry. What you mean you're not angry?
Revocation of the Black card. You don't have
right. Because I was like, you ain't Black enough. She ain't Black enough, y'all. Like I thought, but what I realized is that you can be Black, you can be upset you can be angry. You get to be angry, you can be angry and express it. You can express your anger, and that's totally legit. But it's not a good place to live. You don't have to live in the anger of it. It's not healthy for you. It's not productive for anybody.
You said something. It just reminded me of a conversation I was having with. So I did one of these recordings with a friend. I won't say which one because I don't want anybody to be triggered who's listening or watching, but just keep this kind of vague because it is broad and it is relevant. So how many people aren't familiar with the Black experiences, and Black people and non-Black people. In this particular instance, talking about non-Black people, white Americans especially. And so whether that is that there are Black folks coming to the realization that there's inequities, whether that experience is that what being poor means, being Black and poor means, being Black and female or Black and male and poor means, whether that experience is being called or hearing like the N-word in different ways on a regular basis. These are things that are just like unfathomable for people who are not next door to it, don't have family, don't even have friends. It's not their lived experience. And that's, without judgment. But what you're saying is that, it is helpful to share these experiences with people so that they begin to have an understanding. And I really wanted to point that out because I was speaking with someone else who stopped me after listening to one of these episodes and it was like, she just said the N-word just so casually, that's just weird. Don't you think? It's like, no, that was like she was relaying this experience that she had where that was something that she heard on a regular basis. And like, if you're a Black person, you probably know like the different tiers of like when and why you hear this word in the world.
And how it's used, right? Because it's used in so many ways, right?
So many ways.
Nouns, verbs. I mean, one thing about our experiences is the process of learning about the Black experience, right? Because I'm almost like what's actually coming up for me is like, okay, so there's a Black experience and then there's the Black community, right? I think that when I was growing up, I might have conflated the two. And I'm like, and maybe even to this day. But what I'm starting to think about is, you're kind of, because you're Black, you're born into a community of Black people, right? You're born into the community. But this concept that we all hope for, it's like an ideal of a unified Black experience. And I can't even say we all hope for, right? Because that's a little off. But this idea of the Black experience may not be real, right? It may, I mean, that's what pulls the community, starts to fray the community in some ways, right? That's often what we use to judge each other. That's what we use to get each other back in line, right? Because it's like, no, we're supposed to be having this experience, and in this experience, we're all like expressing ourselves in this way. We have some agreement, right? Some foundational understanding of what it is to be Black in this world or country, or community, you know, and I'm just like, okay, you know, that gave me some pause, like, whoa.
Yeah. Which kind of moves into, when does being Black not matter for you?
You know what? No.
It's a weird way to ask it.
No, it's a good question. It made me really think, because, you know, I wanted it to not matter. Like recently, so I'm part of this. I'm a consultant on this team that strives for anti-Black racism in the world, right? And in this one particular organization. And in our like, we had a retreat, and during the retreat we were you know, we were able to kind of create together what we wanted the retreat to look like, some of the goals, and some of the whatever it was that we were seeing as important. So because of COVID, because of George Floyd, especially in 2020, we came to a pause, and we started to really look at racism and really look at ourselves, and we challenged each other. Now, this is a team, you know, it's a very diverse team, but we challenge each other, like, okay, we got to do our work, y'all, because if our goal is anti-Black racism, we're not there yet as a team. We're kidding ourselves, right? So anyway, so part of this process involved affinity groups, right, where there was a BIPOC group, Black, Indigenous, people of color group, and then white people group. Now, I can't say that I necessarily have full voice in this. You know, it was like a lot of the BIPOC people, Black people especially, were like, well, come on now, no. Like, what? Like, do we really need to do that? Do we need to start splitting ourselves in the sake of like diversity and inclusion? But yeah. So when we did, you know, I wanted it to be both important and it was important and unimportant, I guess, to join this BIPOC group. Because it was like a sense, you know, when we first showed up, it was like, oh, this is like a party. You know, people were like, somebody was playing music, and we'd be like, oh, we Black up in here? You know, like, you know what I mean? It's like, we Black.
Yeah.
And what I've started to feel and what became really evident was like, okay, then it was like, you know, because there was a series of calls. And so it became like, oh, I don't trust you though, Black lady. You know, and then it was like, oh, Black lady, you sound, and it was a lot of, you know, like, Black lady, you got white mentality, but then it was like, oh, Black lady, you too Black. Like, you always talking about being Black, you know, and then it became just, everybody was judging everybody. It was a lot of distrust between us. And so even though in that way I wanted Blackness to matter, because I thought it would be something that automatically unifies us, it's like that when you start to see people are people, you see them as individuals, right? And people who are who they are with their histories, and they bring all of them into these relationships, and you start to realize, like, it's not about, like, Blackness it's not as important in a space full of Black professionals.
I'm, you know, laughing because that's kind of a common theme, and it really does turn into, like, if I'm reflecting on the times in my life where I'm like, wait, when did I stop thinking about, kind of like actively stop thinking about my Blackness, or like tell myself to turn the switch off? And it's like, typically when I'm in a room of people who look like me, like, oh, all right, so I get to worry about other stuff now. And that's an interesting, and there's plenty of other things to worry about, especially in that kind of professional setting, doing the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and it's like other identities popped out, right? Other identities really started to come to the forefront, because it was like, well, as a trans person, you know, and somebody was like, well, as a woman, you know, and started pointing the finger at men, and it was like a lot of other things became more important. So it just got me thinking about, how we group up according to which um, group we believe holds the most safety for us at that time, right?
Mm,
And or right, if we're a little bit evolved, um, which group allows us to be more authentically us. So,
mm.
but I'm
I
lost.
like
I'm
that.
lost. I'm like, I don't even know, because that threw me for a loop. I was like, oh, people that I thought we was, so I thought we was all black, but now we just keep finding issues. We have problems. We just got
Right.
problems within each other, right? But we
Yeah.
really got problems with ourselves. That's
Yeah.
clearly
Yeah.
where it starts.
Which really moves into the next bit on philosophy and critical thinking. The question is, when are philosophy and or critical thinking important for you? Excuse me, personally or professionally? So you can take one or the other, philosophy or critical thinking. Take this with personally or professionally. When do these things come up?
Yeah.
Asking big questions or just asking more questions.
Yeah, I think as a young person, my mother, especially, well, I would say a lot of people in my family, but my mother forced me to start to think more critically. I was, came from a family of five siblings. And then there's my mother, father, a bunch of cousins, same ages. And so a bunch of cousins, aunts, just a big old family who either lived in the same house, across the street, down the street. And so we would just, I would notice on Fridays, consistently, all of the grown-ups will gather at the dining room table and they play spades and bid whist and talk crap and gossip. But in the gossip was a lot of ideas, right?
Mm.
Ideating and grand scheme making, right? Grand plans and visions and dreams and what ifs and what you think about, and so um, it was always, a process of like shifting and playing around with reality, um,
Mm.
creating that space for one another to start to think critically about either something that was going on that they were facing or someone that they knew was facing, or to try to shift. At times I noticed my mother being like she would like, I don't know, like she played a role in helping people to expand their perspective. So she would
Mm.
challenge certain people's, beliefs if they were holding themselves or someone else small. So she would just, get in there like, hey, okay, let's think about that. Like, what if? And so I was surrounded by that, right? Whereas I used to look at it in terms of like, yeah, I get around my family and we just like laugh and talk shit, right? And that's, what I learned Black people do. Like when they having a good
Yeah.
time, they get together and talk shit. But in
Yeah.
the shit talking is a way, is philosophy, right? In
Right.
the shit talking and you always have like uncles who think that they like the best philosophers ever, but then everybody's looking like that don't quite add up. So but that, even in the pause as a younger person, noticing when people would shift or had a side eye, just be like, I'm curious about that, made me curious about it, right? And then people would challenge me, and so I was never able to just think one thing or one way. I was never encouraged to just accept stuff and just let that be. So that lays the foundation for what I do now. Like when I was thinking about it in my work, right now I work as one of the feedback coaching advisors for Blooming Willow Coaching. And as a feedback advisor, one of my roles or responsibilities is to, tighten up the skills of the students who are part of the program, who are learning the coaching skills, and to just, so I'm using my critical thinking there every time. Like, how can I enhance this? How can I help them see bigger? Or how can I help them to grow? And I'm thinking long term. But
Mhm.
the philosophy is what I bring into my feedback a lot, because I'm always thinking about what foundation are they standing upon right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have some sense of who they are, who they're becoming, then I'm thinking about how can that foundation, the one that they had and or the one that they can continue to build, support them in achieving this goal of being an amazing coach, right? And
Mm.
um, so I think about that a lot. I was thinking about it the other day. I was sitting there and I was like, this person, does not, like their core principles uh, aren't coming through as they aren't coming through as coach, and
Mm-hmm.
the philosophy of being a healing centered coach isn't quite attached to what they're doing.
Mm.
So when I think of philosophy, um, so it's funny. I think of it in a couple of different ways. And I get nervous talking about philosophy with you, Joy, because I'm like, come on
No,
now,
it's
I know
okay.
who
It's
you
fine.
are. Um, but but what I go back to is like in college, I took this philosophy course. I took two of them, and one was
Uh-huh.
intro to philosophy. And in that class, I found that I always had something to contribute, but I held back on contributing it
Mm-hmm.
because I always had a different philosophy, different from most people in the classroom, because the class was at least 92% white male,
Mm.
right? It's led by a white man, and white men admired him, and they took his course, and
Mm-hmm.
they would talk loud and high five each other, and they thought that their philosophies around about the world were the best, and just core.
Yeah.
And I would be sitting there like doubting myself. Well, not doubting my worldview or my perspective, but I would be doubting whether or not it's worth sharing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'd be like, well, they not gonna get it, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it is. And also I didn't know at that time. I was like, I think that the world should be this, but when nobody's really there to validate
Yeah.
the way you see it, and I think I was invalidated a few times, so I was like, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
my relationship with philosophy in general isn't that, like as an academic um, avenue feels disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
But as I understood philosophy, it was a way to change ideas and thus change the world.
Mm.
And I try my best to change the world. so, so I got
Yeah.
ideas for days, right? Like, my
That's
belief is,
part of the reason that I love you so much, because I feel that. I really, really feel that. And there's been times where like I feel like I've got too many ideas, and my dog, I feel
he's
like I
so
got too
cute.
he is adorable. You need to get up and get some water. Just get some water. He's sitting in the sunlight, and he does this when he's thirsty. He just needs to
Oh,
get up
yeah.
and get some water. But yeah, I've always there's been times where I felt like I have too many ideas, um, or I just don't know what I'm supposed to do with them all. And it's easier when it's like, oh, I've got ideas for like choreography. Like, okay, I just need to get into the studio. But when it's like all these big world kind of things, like, well, what am I supposed to do with, like, I don't even want them all. Like, can I just give them away? Can I create
Right.
that? So no, and you're absolutely right that, like, philosophy is a way to kind of like foster those ideas, to pick them apart in order to strengthen them. And that's why I wrote this down, that you've held on to this, like, basically checking people with their core principles. Like that is what philosophy does. Like, okay, well, let's reduce everything to what is not, to what cannot be reduced, and then move forward from there, or make sure that everything is aligned with that foundation, with those core principles. And if we have a problem with figuring out what those core principles are, then okay, let's look at core principles like capital letters, and then figure out where you fit in there.
Mm.
So
Joy, you blew the lid off of my life. I'm like, I struggle with, I struggle socially because of that. I struggle because I'm always trying to reduce things down, right? If something, like, because people tend to like do this naturally. Before I became a coach, you know, my brothers especially, but you know, people would call and they would call me and my mother, right? And so I would just notice that I guess I'm that person now in this generation, right? They'll call and I would just listen, right? But until I felt like I had something to say, until I had something to challenge, right? Because it's like and it's not challenging in a way that's like, you're not, you know, like, well, stop doing that. I dare you, you know, it's more so just reducing it. Right. Like, so you're holding these assumptions, what's underneath these assumptions, and is it still something you want to continue to hold, or what can shift? Right. And so I get in trouble because what I realize is that sometimes people don't want that. People don't want you to they want you to listen. They don't need your ideas. They don't need you to see it different. And they just want to be in their perspective. They want to have their philosophy. And I can't, I'm like, I told people, I was like, well, don't call me then, you know, like,
You're not to call.
This is what I do. I'm not going to be able to not ask at least, what else have you tried? Right. What else have you tried? What else can you imagine is going on? Right. And I got told by my hairdresser that because of that, she was like, oh, I bet you can't kiki right. And I was like, nah, I can't. That's why I can't kiki. I don't get invited to the parties, right? Especially like, people do not like it. Because I'm like, I can't just sit there and hold somebody in one frame of mind and, you know, one like little characterization. I didn't say that right, but you know, caricature. Yeah, like I'm not gonna hold him that small. Like, this person is a whole ass person. So
no, I feel that too. And what it's like, I struggle with that with my personal relationships, with people in my family especially, but then like coworkers who is like, no, really, don't go to Joy, because she's not the one. If you just want to like have a lighthearted conversation, it's gonna go all Joy on you. I had a coworker tell me that one time. Are you gonna go all Joy on me?
Am I supposed to go Jane on you? I don't know her.
Right. But then it's like, then I have kind of the opposite issue. It's like, there are times where, you know, we are human, and I do want that. I do want to just like be in my space of irrationality and like non-foundation, or acting like somebody that I know I shouldn't be acting like, not holding true to my spirit. I want to be that sometimes. And then the people in my life who know what's good for me are trying to pull me out of it. It's like, no, I don't want
Yeah.
but yeah, I feel that I don't get invited to those parties.
Right. Like, they seem kind of fun, you know. Sometimes they seem fun. I listen in. But you know, it's like, I might need to just, let's have a dance party instead. Like, just do that.
So my final official question is the big one. It's on existential dilemmas, existential crises. So how do you deal with existential dilemmas, either personally or professionally? How do they come up for you? How do you see them in the world?
Trump. That person. Of course he would come to mind first.
Right?
Because he played a dirty role in so many things, or it was just anti so many positive, like so many hopes and dreams that we have for ourselves in our world. But you know, everybody blames Trump for everything, including me. And I need to just move on. And so I think, you know, when I When I think of an existential dilemma, uh, well, something that's threatening us is our world. You know, we had a fire NATO going on.
Yeah.
Um, every time I think of fire NATOs, I think of Pompeii, right? I'm like,
Mm.
come on, they didn't see that coming. Now they didn't have the technology we have, but there's so much that Mother Nature can do that our little devices can't compare to,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we may not see certain things coming. I think that we are, um, in a really odd place of needing to listen
Mm.
to yeah to what so this is yeah, I'm about to get kind of like spiritually on you.
Yeah.
um
Go for
but
it.
I think, when I talk about Mother Nature, I'm also talking about Mother God, right? And I'm who knows, God probably don't have no gender, um but yeah, I'm really thinking about listening to kind of like this, however people might see it for themselves, but listening to spirit guides, guardian angels, all the protectors that we know are telling us what's up, right? And we get
Mm-hmm.
those experiences in our body, the somatic feelings, we get the vibrations, we get the
Mm-hmm.
images, we get the sensations, we get the emotion. And we get like a feeling like, oh, I'm feeling like I should run. You
Mm-hmm.
probably should run, you know what I'm saying, because
Mm-hmm.
something is going on. And I'm not one of those people that's like super dark or like, yeah, if it, living in fear all the time.
Right.
But I also don't think that we need to be so complacent and so aloof to the what's happening in the world. And the one way that we can track what's happening in the world is by tracking what's going on inside of us. I mean, we are
Mm-hmm.
all star stuff. Right? We made a same star. I watch Neil deGrasse Tyson all the time. And I just and there's this like knowing of that there's something not just greater, but there's a continuum of time.
Yeah.
Well, he says space-time continuum, right? And it is. And if you believe in karma, you believe in life cycles.
Right.
And you can understand where you're at. Or I mean, you may not know. I don't know what life cycle I'm on exactly. I mean,
Right.
certain astrologies tell me different things, but I wouldn't know exactly. I mean, that's like, okay, I think I am. But
Right.
the point is that if you hold a connection to that, or just kind of keep an ear, stay attuned to what it is that you're experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
and don't necessarily just brush it off,
Mm-hmm.
then you could potentially start to care about what else is going on in your environment. You can
Right.
care about what else other people are experiencing, be understanding that what they're experiencing has an impact on you.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm coaching, for instance, and coaching or not coaching, I could be in a meeting and somebody gets a swell of emotion that's overcoming them. Sometimes I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm like, and I get consumed too, where I have to take a deep breath and reground. And I might not even be aware, that's that person on the other side of, the camera, or unless I'm like looking at them, say if it's a meeting of a lot of people, unless I'm looking at them or hearing it in their voice or something like that, I might not even know that that's what they're experiencing, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
experiencing it too. We're
Mm-hmm.
all connected in that way,
Mm-hmm.
especially emotionally. There's a lot of people in California, and I'm not finding them so much here in Florida yet, but a lot of empaths, people who can
Mm-hmm.
admit I'm an empath, I feel it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so because of that, it's important that the people around them are also feeling good, or also
Mm-hmm.
feeling safe, or also feeling connected, healthy, because it does resonate, it affects, it vibrates.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so I really feel like the existential crises is, and the threat to us is our complacency or our disconnection with ourselves.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
I didn't know I was going to say that.
No, I mean, that statement is a disconnection with ourselves. That's big. And most existential crises are. And then put simply, how you said we're not listening. We need to get back in touch with listening. We need to listen more. We have a disconnect when it comes to listening, just as a species. Um, yeah, I feel that.
Mhm.
As a resident empath on this property, but all of us have that work to do, and it can be beneficial for all of us to listen more, and perhaps we need to listen in different ways, if I can like offer that, to,
Mhm.
not just listening with our ears, perhaps listening to our bodies more, perhaps
Mhm.
listening to our heart, either the
Mhm.
actual physical heart or our emotional heart more, listening to our emotions more, understanding the wide variety of them, listening to our peers, our colleagues, our families, our children, our
Mhm.
parents, whoever it might be,
Our
more,
pets,
our
because your dog
pets.
made me, I was like, I
Yeah.
need some water too.
Yes, because there's, and to take it back to something you were pointed out about blackness, like it was something that came up, that it was, one of these realizations I had in the last 6 months or so, that it's not just a black thing, but something that I am happy about. One of these privileges of blackness is the understanding of different linguistics, as you said, that I know what means. I know what oh, or or if I call someone a girl, like I know what that means, as opposed to girl. Like these are there's these different ways of hearing, ways of speaking, and it's that same thing with listening. That if you hearing my dog whining, and I explain that that is something that he does when he's thirsty, and that reminds you that perhaps you should drink some water, like that is a
Mhm.
level of listening that many people are disconnected from, to hearing reminders in the world, hearing notes coming from the world or your environment of doing things different, or doing things how we are supposed to.
Mhm.
I think you've really touched on something there. That's whew, I wasn't expecting it on this Sunday morning.
I mean, like you talking about listening, like I think we all listened with our eyes when we saw Michelle Obama walking through that Capitol,
Yes.
right? She was like, "Look, I'm me, and I'm here, right? So
Yes.
whatever, I don't know if it was whatever, but she was just herself, right?
Yes.
Um, yeah, I think I listen for that, every
Yeah. Yeah.
time. Yeah, I even had to
Just
listen
gonna.
differently when Katy Perry was singing that, during the fireworks
Oh, I missed
after
all that.
the inauguration. Oh man,
Okay,
I
I
was
have to
like,
find
I
that
never
online.
heard Katy Perry sing from the depths of her soul. She was so. I listened and I heard her saying,
Okay.
"That's Trump." Get the hell on.
Yeah, I have to look that up. That's interesting. So, like I said, that was my final official question. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Anything else you would like to say, to the world, or anything that we did not cover?
To say, like, I just want to say, like, be you, be you, um
Mhm.
because when you are you, life gets easier. When you're you and you know who that is, um nobody can tell you shit. It's like,
Yes.
I don't know if that's the words of wisdom, right? But I think I'll just draw from Mama RuPaul Charles,
Okay.
who says, "Know who you are and deliver it at all times."
Hmm. Thank you.
Mhm. And thank you,
Thank
Mama Ru.
you. Yeah.